In my last video, I made this welding table, and in this video, I'm going to make some storage for it. And as I showed in the previous video, I have no storage in my metal workshop whatsoever, so this is something I desperately need. I'll be making two cabinets. I'm using 3mm sheet steel, and I'll start by cutting all the panels. To keep the cut straight, I'm clamping a piece of angle iron to the sheet steel and using that as a guide. I have a lot of cuts to make, and it's going to be a fair amount of work using a cut-off disc and an angle grinder, but I'll just get into it and I'll see how it goes. The full sheet is too heavy for me to move comfortably, but when I've cut the first piece it should be more manageable and I can move it inside and cut the rest on the workbench. These are the biggest pieces, they're for the back panels, and cutting this piece into two panels is almost the correct size, but I'll need to trim them to fit later on. All the other pieces will all be cut to the finished dimensions. That wasn't much fun at all, and there's still plenty more cuts to make. It also leaves a burr that needs removing, even though that isn't too difficult. But I decided I needed to find a better way, so I went out and bought this metal cutting saw, and I'm pretty excited to see how that goes. The distance from the blade to the edge of the base is the same as this piece of flat bar, so I'm using that to help position the guide. That really was amazing and quite possibly the best thing I've ever bought. Much easier than using the grinder. It's a super clean cut, there's very few sparks, and the steel doesn't even get hot. I'm nearly there with cutting the cabinet panels. I just need one more piece from the next sheet. There's barely a burr on the edge, but they are sharp, so I'm just taking that edge off. I've decided to build the cabinet in position. I just need to grind the internal welds on the frame so the side panels can sit in the correct position. I'm fixing the side panels to the frame with screws in case I ever want to remove the cabinets, not that I think that will ever happen. These self-drilling screws were a real pain. I couldn't get enough grip while driving them, so I decided to help them out by pre-drilling first. I didn't want to pre-drill for all the screws unless I really had to, so I tried hex head screws and they went in no worries at all. I did use a little cutting fluid just to help them out and make them cut a bit easier. I cleaned the surface rust off all the panels with a Scotch-Brite disc, and I should have done the side panels too before I fitted them, but I just had to manage with them in place. To fix the drawer runners to the side panels, I'm going to weld them, and I thought my gasless MIG welder would be better to do that with, as it doesn't need the gas nozzle and it should get in there a little easier. Next, I'll join the two sides by welding on the top, and I need to clamp on a couple of supports just to hold it in position. I'm going to weld some angle iron to the front edge of the top pieces, and that will add some support and it will finish it off. Next, I need to fit the back panels, and as I mentioned earlier, they need trimming down to size. I'll put some finish on the cabinet now, but first I'll wipe it all down with some turps. I'm using Penetrol as any weld spatter that lands on the top of the cabinet won't make too much of a mess, and it will be easy to apply another coat if necessary, and it could even be waxed. I'm coating the whole thing inside and out, but I may paint over the sides and the back of the cabinet later on. Now the cabinet's done, I'll start making the drawers. For those, I'm using 12mm or 1/2 inch plywood. They're nothing fancy and very straightforward. The drawers will get steel fronts, so no plywood will be exposed when I'm using the table for welding. That's all the sides cut. Next I'll cut all the bottoms. I cut them slightly oversized first, then trim them down after, making sure that they're square. Now I'm trimming the long edges down to final size, and handling a smaller panel makes it easier to keep it tight against the fence and keeping it accurate. Next I'll square up one of the ends, and as I don't have a crosscut sled for my new saw yet, I knocked up this simple one. It only took 20 minutes to make and it worked out great. Now I'm pushing the square edge against the fence and trimming the opposite edge to the final size. The general rule when pushing a workpiece along the fence is the longest edge should be against the fence. This is very true, but with proper control on a piece like this that isn't too narrow across the panel, then for me I'm comfortable doing that. But as I've said in past videos, don't do anything on the table saw that you're not comfortable with, and this could have been done on a crosscut sled. Now I'll put the drawers together with glue and brad nails. It's nothing fancy, but I've made plenty of drawers for the workshop like this in the past, and they're more than strong enough. I'm fixing the slides to the drawers with a couple of screws now. When they're fitted and adjusted, I'll add a third one then. Next I'll make drawer fronts. They'll be plywood again, but they'll be covered with 3mm sheet steel. When I bought this saw, it was the last one off the shelf, so I didn't get a box or any accessories, so I made this quick guide that I'm using here. On the larger drawer fronts, I went back to using an angle iron as a guide, just as I did on the panels earlier. For the drawer handles, I'm using 30mm angle iron, and they'll run the full length of the drawer. I thought of all different ways of doing this, but I decided to weld the handle and the drawer front together before they get fitted. Originally, I was going to glue the front on and screw it from the top, but I had an afterthought and I decided to bolt the front on. This will go all the way through both pieces of plywood, clamping them together and making them stronger. I could have drilled a hole through the fronts, through the plywood and the steel, put bolts in, and that would have been much easier, but I wanted to keep the faces looking clean, so I welded the bolts to the back of the steel front. The welds on the studs aren't the prettiest, but they'll do the job. I need to make clearance for the welds on the studs, so I'll do that with a large countersink bit. I also need to make some clearance for the welds on the inside of the handle, so I'll do that by planing a large chamfer off the top of the drawer front. While I was spraying, I touched up the paint on the frame too, and even though I didn't show it, I also painted the inside of the drawer fronts with some old paint. I haven't painted the outside of the cabinet in this video, but I think that is something that I'll do. I reckon the whole table has turned out fantastic. I'm so happy with it. And as I said at the beginning, I was in desperate need for storage, so these drawers are going to be a big help. I'm not finished yet though, as I'm going to make some triangle drawers for the other side. It's getting very heavy, but the casters seem to be handling it with ease. Anyway, that's the end of this video, so hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, please like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.